They called her a leech. They called her a nobody. For 3 years, Brenda scrubbed their floors, cooked their meals, and endured the sneers of the Hawthorne family, all for the sake of a husband who wouldn't even look her in the eye. But when they called her a leech, they called her a nobody. For 3 years, Brenda scrubbed their floors, cooked their meals, and endured the sneers of the Hawthorne family, all for the sake of a husband who wouldn't even look her in the eye. But when Liam Hawthorne threw the divorce papers on the table, laughing as he kicked her out with nothing but the clothes on her back, he made the biggest mistake of his life. He didn't know that the penniless orphan he was discarding was actually the hidden CEO of Stratton Enterprises, a woman capable of buying his entire family's legacy with pocket change. And today, the check comes due. The silence in the Hawthorne dining room was always loud, but tonight it was deafening. The crystal chandelier above cast a cold, unforgiving light on the mahogany table where the Hawthorne family sat. Beatrice, the matriarch, at the head. Liam, her son and the golden boy, to her right, and Jessica Sterling, the daughter of a real estate tycoon, seated uncomfortably close to him. Brenda stood by the swinging kitchen doors, her hands red and raw from scrubbing the pots used to prepare the coq au vin that sat half-eaten on their plates. She wiped her hands on her faded apron, taking a deep breath. It was their 3rd anniversary. She had a small gift in her pocket, a watch she had saved for months to buy. It wasn't a Rolex, like the one Liam wore, but it was engraved. "More wine, Brenda. Don't just stand there like a statue," Beatrice snapped, not even looking up from her plate. Her voice was sharp, like shattering glass. "Honestly, Liam, I don't know why we don't just hire a professional maid. At least they would know proper service etiquette." Liam didn't defend her. He never did. He swirled the expensive Cabernet in his glass, his eyes fixed on Jessica, who giggled at something he whispered. Brenda stepped forward, the bottle of wine trembling slightly in her hand. I have something for you, Liam," she said, her voice barely a whisper. The room went silent. Beatrice dropped her fork with a clatter. "Excuse me?" Beatrice hissed. "We are entertaining a guest, Brenda. You do not speak unless spoken to." Liam finally turned his head. His handsome face, once the source of Brenda's butterflies, was twisted in a look of mild annoyance, as if he were looking at a stain on his expensive Italian suit. "Actually, Mother." "Let her speak," Liam said, though his tone was devoid of kindness. "It's perfect timing, really." He reached into his inner jacket pocket. Brenda's heart leapt. Did he get her a gift too? Did he remember? He pulled out a thick, manila envelope and slid it across the polished table. It stopped inches from her apron strings. "Happy anniversary, Brenda," Liam said flatly. Brenda reached out, her fingers brushing the cold paper. She opened it. The bold letters at the top screamed at her. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The world seemed to tilt. "Liam, what is this?" "It's over, Brenda," Liam said, leaning back and draping an arm over Jessica's chair. Jessica smirked, taking a sip of her wine. "I need a wife who fits my future. With the merger coming up between Hawthorne Industries and the Sterling Group, I need someone who understands our world. Not whatever you are." "A charity case," Beatrice supplied helpfully, dabbing her mouth with a napkin. "We took you in when you had nothing. An orphan with no connections, no money, no pedigree. We gave you a roof over your head. I was your wife," Brenda said, her voice shaking. "I loved you. I took care of this house. I took care of your mother when she was sick." "You did what you were supposed to do," Liam cut in coldly. "And you were compensated, room and board. But now, Jessica and I are together. She can bring $50 million in assets to the marriage. You bring nothing but embarrassment. Jessica chimed in, her voice sickly sweet. Don't make this difficult, Brenda. Liam deserves someone on his level. You can keep the apron, though, as a souvenir. Brenda felt a coldness spread through her chest. It wasn't sadness. It was the icy clarity of realization. For 3 years, she had played the role of the humble housewife, hiding her identity to see if someone could love her for her, not her bank account. She had her answer. You want me to sign these? Brenda asked, her voice steadying. Immediately, Liam said. And there's no alimony. The prenup you signed 3 years ago ensures you leave with exactly what you came with. Nothing. Beatrice laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Make sure you check her bag before she leaves, Liam. She might try to steal the silverware. Brenda looked at them, really looked at them. She saw the greed in Beatrice's eyes, the arrogance in Liam's posture, the cruelty in Jessica's smile. Fine, Brenda said. She reached for a pen from Liam's pocket, a Mont Blanc she had bought him anonymously for his birthday last year. He flinched as she took it. She signed the papers with a flourish. Brenda Jenkins. I'll be gone in 10 minutes, she said, placing the pen down. But Liam, remember this moment. You aren't losing a liability. You're losing your only safety net. Liam laughed, shaking his head. Safety net? Brenda, you can't even afford an Uber. Get out of my house. Brenda walked up the grand staircase of the Hawthorne estate for the last time. She didn't cry. The tears had dried up somewhere between the second and third insult. She went to the guest room. She hadn't shared a bed with Liam in 6 months, and pulled out a single battered duffel bag. She packed 2 pairs of jeans, 3 t-shirts, and the locket her grandmother gave her. She left the jewelry Liam had bought her for appearances. She left the expensive dresses Beatrice forced her to wear at galas where she was ignored. She walked back downstairs. The laughter from the dining room was loud and raucous. They were toasting to her departure. She walked out the heavy oak front door and into the biting cold of the November night. The wind whipped her hair across her face, but she didn't feel the chill. She felt lighter. As the heavy gates of the Hawthorne estate clicked shut behind her, she walked down the long, winding driveway toward the main road. A light rain began to fall, soaking her thin sweater. A few cars passed, splashing water onto her jeans. It was the perfect image of defeat. Or so it seemed. Brenda reached the corner of the street, near a secluded bus stop. She reached into the hidden pocket of her duffel bag and pulled out a phone. It wasn't the cracked iPhone 8 Liam allowed her to have. It was a sleek, custom-encrypted device worth more than Liam's car. She dialed a single number. Status, she said. Her voice had changed. The tremble was gone, replaced by a tone of absolute command. Ms. Jenkins, a deep, panicked voice answered on the other end. It was Arthur Penhaligon, her chief of staff. Thank God you called. The board is in chaos. The stocks took a 2% dip because of the rumors about your sabbatical. When are you coming back? I'm back now, Arthur, Brenda said, watching the rain hit the pavement. Send the car. I'm at the corner of Oak and Fifth, near the Hawthorne residence. The Hawthorne residence? The small regional manufacturing family? Arthur asked, confused. What were you doing there? Research, Brenda said darkly. Failed research. Just get here. And Arthur? Yes, ma'am? Prepare the acquisition team. I want a full audit on Hawthorne Industries. Their debts, their suppliers, their loans, everything. Consider it done. The Phantom is 2 minutes away. Brenda hung up. She stood in the rain, waiting. 2 minutes later, the darkness of the street was sliced open by blinding LED headlights. A cavalcade of 3 black SUVs roared around the corner, flanking a sleek, silver Rolls-Royce Phantom. The convoy screeched to a halt in front of her. Uniformed security guards jumped out of the SUVs, opening umbrellas and forming a protective perimeter. The back door of the Rolls-Royce opened, and a man in an impeccable suit stepped out, holding a large umbrella. He hurried over to Brenda, looking horrified at her wet clothes. "Miss Jenkins," he said, bowing his head slightly. "I am so sorry we weren't here sooner." Brenda handed him her battered duffel bag. "It's fine, James. Take me to the penthouse. I need a shower, and I need a war room." She slid into the back of the Rolls-Royce. The interior smelled of rich leather and success. She picked up the tablet waiting for her on the seat. The screen lit up, displaying the logo of her empire, Stratton Enterprises. Stratton Enterprises wasn't just a company. It was a global conglomerate. Tech, pharmaceuticals, and, ironically, the very bank that held the mortgage on the Hawthorne estate. Brenda tapped the screen, pulling up the file on Hawthorne Industries. It was a small, struggling company, kept afloat by loans and the desperate hope of a merger with the Sterling Group. "You called me a penniless orphan," Brenda whispered to the empty car as the driver pulled away, leaving the muddy curb behind. She looked at the financial data on the screen. Hawthorne Industries had a debt of $12 million due next month. The bank, her bank, had been lenient because of Liam's late father's reputation. "James," Brenda said to the driver. "Yes, ma'am?" "Call the bank division. Tell them to call in the Hawthorne loan. Immediately. No extensions." "Yes, ma'am. And where should we go after you've changed?" Brenda looked out the window at the city skyline, a city she practically owned. "The Ritz," she said, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. "I hear the Sterling Group is hosting their engagement party there next week. I think I'll crash it." The Rolls-Royce disappeared into the night, carrying the woman who had just declared war. Back at the house, Liam was pouring another glass of wine, oblivious that the ground beneath his feet was already crumbling. The penthouse of the Stratton Tower sat 80 floors above the city, a fortress of glass and steel that pierced the clouds. It was silent here, not the uncomfortable, judgmental silence of the Hawthorne dining room, but the heavy, insulated silence of absolute power. Brenda stepped out of the private elevator, her wet sneakers squeaking against the Italian marble floors. The staff was already there. Not the kind of staff Beatrice Hawthorne employed, overworked and underpaid women from the neighborhood, but a phalanx of highly trained professionals, a personal stylist, a chef from a Michelin star background, and her executive assistant, Claire, were waiting in a line. They didn't gasp at her appearance, though Brenda knew she looked like a drowned rat. They simply bowed their heads in respect. "Welcome home, Miss Jenkins," Claire said, stepping forward with a thick white robe warmed to the perfect temperature. "The bath is drawn, lavender and Epsom salts, just as you prefer after difficult days." Brenda allowed Claire to take her wet coat. "Thank you, Claire. Cancel my morning meetings for tomorrow, but keep the board of directors on standby for tonight. I need to convene the war room at midnight." "Understood. And the Hawthorne file?" "Print it physically," Brenda said, her voice hard. "I want to hold the paper in my hands when I tear it apart." Brenda walked into the master bathroom. It was the size of the entire ground floor of the Hawthorne house. She stood before the floor-to-ceiling mirror and looked at the woman staring back. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair matted with rain, her skin pale. For 3 years she had suppressed her natural radiance, wearing no makeup, tying her hair back in severe buns, and wearing ill-fitting clothes to make herself smaller, to make herself the perfect, non-threatening wife for a man with a fragile ego. She turned on the shower. It wasn't just a shower, it was a deluge of hot water from a rainfall head. She stepped in, scrubbing her skin raw. She used a vanilla-scented scrub, desperate to wash away the smell of the onion and garlic she had chopped for Liam's dinner, a dinner he hadn't even touched. As the steam filled the room, the tears finally came. She didn't sob loudly. She just leaned her forehead against the cool tile and let the water mix with the salt on her face. She cried, not because she missed him, but because of the time she had wasted. She cried for the girl who thought love was enough. She cried for the humiliation of begging for grocery money from Beatrice while her own accounts held billions. 20 minutes later, the water turned off. The woman who stepped out was no longer the discarded wife. She wrapped herself in the robe and walked into her dressing room. Claire was waiting. Ms. Jenkins, the stylist, brought the new season's collection from Paris. However, for tonight's internal meeting, what is your preference? Brenda ran her hand along a rack of silk blouses. She stopped at a sharp, tailored suit in blood-red velvet. The red, Brenda said softly. It's a declaration of war. By midnight, Brenda sat at the head of a massive obsidian conference table. The view of the city lights sprawled beneath her. 6 men and women, the inner circle of Stratton Enterprises, sat around her. They looked tired but alert. You didn't sleep when Brenda Jenkins called. Arthur Penhaligon stood by the screen, a laser pointer in his trembling hand. Ms. Jenkins, Arthur began, clearing his throat. We've done the deep dive you requested on Hawthorne Industries. It's worse than we thought. Show me, Brenda commanded, sipping a cup of black coffee. Arthur clicked a button. A web of red lines appeared on the screen, connecting Hawthorne Industries to various banks and suppliers. Liam Hawthorne has been leveraging the company assets to fund a lifestyle he can't afford, Arthur explained. The cars, the trips to Monaco, the jewelry for Ms. Sterling. It was all bought on company credit. They are technically insolvent. The only reason they haven't declared bankruptcy is a bridge loan from Apex Capital. Brenda's eyes narrowed. Apex Capital? That's one of our subsidiaries, isn't it? It is, Arthur nodded. A low-level subsidiary. We hold their mortgage, their factory equipment loans, and their operating line of credit. The total debt is $15 million. Brenda leaned back in her leather chair, tapping her fingernails against the obsidian table. The sound was rhythmic, like a ticking clock. And the Sterling merger? She asked. Why is Jessica Sterling marrying him if he's broke? That's the key, Arthur said, clicking to the next slide. The Sterlings don't know the extent of the debt. Liam has been cooking the books. He's presenting Hawthorne Industries as a healthy company with temporary cash flow issues. If the merger goes through, he uses the Sterling fortune to pay off the debt before anyone notices. He is using Jessica Sterling as a bailout. A dark smile curled on Brenda's lips. So he's a fraudster, not just an adulterer. Precisely, Arthur said. If we call the loans now, the audit will reveal the fraud. The merger will collapse. The Sterlings will run for the hills. Brenda stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the city, specifically toward the suburb where Liam was likely sleeping soundly, dreaming of his new life. Don't just call the loan, Arthur, she said, her voice barely a whisper, yet it carried to every corner of the room. I want you to invoke the bad faith clause in the contract. Freeze their accounts first. I want his credit cards to decline when he tries to buy his morning coffee. I want the factory gates locked before the workers arrive. I want to suffocate him. It will be done by 8 a.m., Arthur confirmed. And one more thing. Brenda turned back to the room. The engagement party at the Ritz. Get me an invitation. Ms. Jenkins, Claire interjected gently. It's a private event. The Sterlings are very exclusive. Brenda looked at Claire, her eyes flashing with a dangerous intensity. Buy the Ritz, Claire. If I own the hotel, I don't need an invitation to inspect the ballroom. The morning sun hit the Hawthorne estate, but the house felt cold. Without Brenda there to wake up at 5 a.m. to adjust the thermostat and brew the coffee, the house was stagnant. Liam woke up with a headache. He rolled over, expecting to see Jessica, but she had gone back to her own penthouse the night before. She refused to sleep on used sheets, as she called them. "Brenda, coffee!" Liam yelled out instinctively, rubbing his temples. Silence. Then he remembered. He chuckled to himself. Right, the witch is gone. He felt a surge of relief. No more moping, no more sad eyes watching him across the table. He was free. He got out of bed, threw on a silk robe, and went downstairs. The kitchen was a mess. Dirty dishes from last night's dinner were still piled in the sink. The smell of stale wine and congealed sauce hung in the air. "Mother," Liam called out, "where is the maid? This place is a pigsty." Beatrice walked into the kitchen, looking disheveled. "The agency said they can't send anyone until tomorrow. We'll just have to make do. We can eat breakfast out. Let's go to Le Jardin." Liam nodded. "Fine. I have to meet the wedding planner with Jessica later anyway. I need to pick up a new suit." 2 hours later, Liam and Beatrice were seated at Le Jardin, the city's most pretentious brunch spot. Liam signaled for the check after a meal of truffle eggs and champagne. He felt like a king. He tossed his Platinum American Express card onto the tray with a practiced flick of the wrist. The waiter took it and walked away. Liam leaned back, smiling at his mother. "Once the merger is signed next week, Mother, we are going to renovate the estate. Get rid of all that tacky furniture Brenda liked." "Good riddance," Beatrice sniffed. The waiter returned. He wasn't smiling anymore. He looked awkward, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Sir," the waiter said quietly, "I'm afraid the card was declined." Liam laughed. "Impossible. Run it again. It's a platinum card. There's no limit." "I ran it 3 times, sir. It says, 'Card seized by issuer.' Do you have another form of payment?" Liam felt a prickle of heat on his neck. "Must be a glitch," he muttered. He pulled out his corporate visa. "Try this one." The waiter returned 2 minutes later, looking even more uncomfortable. "Declined as well, sir. And the manager asked me to tell you that your account has been flagged for suspicious insolvency." "Insolvency?" Beatrice screeched, causing heads to turn at nearby tables. "Do you know who we are? We are Hawthorns." Liam stood up, his face red. He threw a wad of cash, the last of the cash he had in his wallet, onto the table. It barely covered the bill. "Keep the change. I'm calling the bank." He stormed out of the restaurant, dialing the number for his private banker, Mr. Blackwood. "We're sorry," a robotic voice answered. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." While Liam was having a meltdown on the sidewalk, Brenda was stepping out of the Rolls-Royce in the fashion district. She wasn't wearing business attire now. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere coat, oversized sunglasses, and boots that cost more than Liam's car. She entered Valentina's, the most exclusive bridal and evening wear boutique in the city. This was where Jessica Sterling bought all her clothes. Brenda browsed the racks, her fingers trailing over the silk. The shop assistants ignored her at first, judging her by the lack of visible logos on her clothes, mistaking quiet luxury for simplicity. Suddenly, the bell above the door chimed aggressively. Jessica Sterling marched in, followed by 2 frantic assistants. Jessica looked stressed. "I need the dress, Valentina," Jessica barked at the owner, who rushed out from the back. "The gold sequin one for the engagement party. I need it altered by tomorrow." "Miss Sterling," Valentina said nervously. We have a slight problem. You put the dress on hold, but the deposit wasn't paid within the 24-hour window." "So what?" Jessica snapped. "I'm good for it. Liam will pay for it. Put it on the Hawthorne account." Brenda, standing behind a rack of evening gowns, froze. She watched through the gap in the clothes. "We tried to run the Hawthorne account this morning for the deposit," Valentina whispered, lowering her voice. It bounced, Miss Sterling. We were told the assets are frozen." Jessica's face went pale. "What? That idiot! He probably forgot to transfer the funds." She huffed, digging into her own purse. "Fine. I'll pay for it myself. Where is the dress?" Valentina looked terrified. "Well, since the deposit wasn't paid, and it's a one-of-a-kind piece." "Spit it out! We sold it." 10 minutes ago." Jessica's eyes widened in fury. "You sold my engagement dress? To who? Who could possibly afford a $50,000 dress off the rack?" "I did." The voice was calm, velvety, and familiar. Jessica spun around. Brenda stepped out from behind the rack. She wasn't the Brenda Jessica knew, the one in the apron with the messy bun. This woman stood tall, radiating an aura of untouchable elegance, the cream coat draped perfectly over her frame. She held a glass of champagne that the store manager had just handed her. Jessica blinked, confused. "Brenda, what are you doing here? Are you applying for a cleaning job?" Brenda took a slow sip of champagne. "Hello, Jessica. No, I'm not here for a job. I'm here for the dress." She gestured to the counter, where the shimmering gold gown was being carefully wrapped in layers of tissue paper and placed into a velvet box. "You?" Jessica laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. "You can't afford a button on that dress. Did you steal Liam's credit card before you left?" "Liam's cards don't work, Jessica," Brenda said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Didn't you hear? Insolvency is such an ugly word." Jessica stiffened. "Give me the dress, Brenda. I'll give you $500. It's more than you'll make in a month scrubbing floors." Brenda walked up to the counter. She placed her hand on the velvet box. "I'm afraid it's not for sale," Brenda said. "I think I'll wear it. Maybe to a party. I hear there's a big one coming up at the Ritz." "You aren't invited," Jessica spat. "We'll see," Brenda smiled. She turned to the shop assistant. "Please have this delivered to the penthouse at Stratton Tower." The room went silent. Stratton Tower, the most expensive address in the city. Jessica looked at Brenda, really looked at her, and for the first time, she felt a flicker of fear. The woman standing before her wasn't the victim. She was the predator. "Who are you?" Jessica whispered. Brenda adjusted her sunglasses, turning toward the door. "I'm the woman who signed the prenup, Jessica. You should have read the fine print." Brenda walked out into the sunshine, leaving Jessica staring at the empty counter, the echo of her heels sounding like gunshots in the quiet store. The executive office of Hawthorne Industries used to be a place of quiet arrogance. It was where Liam's father had built a legacy, and where Liam had spent the last 3 years dismantling it. Today, the silence was gone, replaced by the chaotic shrill of telephones that no one was answering. Liam sat behind his mahogany desk, his head buried in his hands. The morning sun streamed through the blinds, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Dust from the files he had thrown in a rage 10 minutes ago. His secretary, Mrs. Gable, opened the door. She didn't knock. She was wearing her coat, clutching her purse tightly against her chest. "I'm leaving Liam," she said, her voice trembling but firm. She didn't call him Mr. Hawthorne. The respect had evaporated, along with the payroll. Liam looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "You can't leave, Mrs. Gable. I have the Sterling merger meeting tonight. I need the contracts prepped." "The printers are repossessed," she said flatly, "and the security team just walked out. They said their checks bounced this morning. I can't work for free, Liam. I have a mortgage." "It's a glitch," Liam slammed his fist on the desk. "I told you the bank is sorting it out. By Monday, everyone gets a bonus." Mrs. Gable looked at him with pity. It was the same look Brenda used to give him when he'd come home drunk and angry. "It's not a glitch. The factory foreman called. The gates are chained shut. There's a notice from Apex Capital on the door. It's over." She walked out, leaving the door open. The sound of her heels clicking away echoed like a countdown. Liam scrambled for his phone. He dialed the number for Apex Capital again. This time, someone answered. "Apex Capital, Legal Department," a crisp voice said. "This is Liam Hawthorne," he barked, trying to summon the authority he no longer possessed. "You people have made a grave mistake. You've frozen my operations. Do you know who my father was?" "We are aware of the file, Mr. Hawthorne," the voice replied, unbothered. "We are executing the foreclosure clause based on the evidence of fraudulent accounting provided to us during the audit initiated yesterday." "Audit? What audit?" "You can't just audit me without notice." "We can when the debt is held by our parent company. We have instructions to liquidate assets to recover the $15 million. "Parent company?" Liam paused. Hawthorne Industries had always dealt with Apex as an independent lender. "Who owns you?" "Stratton Enterprises." The phone slipped from Liam's sweaty palm and clattered onto the desk. Stratton Enterprises, the global giant, the leviathan of the corporate world. Why would a company that size care about his mid-sized manufacturing plant? He felt a sudden, claustrophobic panic. He needed money. Fast. He needed to keep the lights on until tonight. If he could just get Mr. Sterling to sign the merger papers at the engagement party, the Sterling capital would flow in, and he could pay off Apex. He grabbed his car keys and ran out of the office. He drove like a madman to his mother's house. When he burst through the front door of the Hawthorne estate, he found Beatrice sitting in the living room. She wasn't panicking. She was sitting in the dark, staring at the wall. "Mother," Liam panted, "I need the emergency bonds, the ones Dad left in the safe. I know you said we should never touch them, but this is it. We need the cash." Beatrice slowly turned her head. Her face was grey. "They're gone, Liam." "What do you mean, gone?" "I sold them," she whispered. "Last year. To pay for your car, and the trip to the Maldives, and Jessica's diamond earrings." Liam stared at her, the room spinning. You spent the safety net?" "I thought you were fixing the company," Beatrice shrieked suddenly, standing up. "You told me profits were up. You told me we were rich. I spent the money because you said we could." "I was lying," Liam screamed back. "I was lying to keep up appearances so I could land Jessica. I needed that money to save us." The truth hung heavy in the air between them. They were two frauds, standing in a house they couldn't afford, wearing clothes they hadn't paid for. "What do we do?" Beatrice whimpered, collapsing back onto the sofa. "The electricity company sent a final notice today." Liam straightened his tie, his hands shaking uncontrollably. A cold, desperate resolve settled over him. "We go to the party," he said. "We go to the Ritz. We smile. We drink champagne. And I make sure Robert Sterling signs that contract before midnight. It's the only way out. If he signs, we use his money to fix this. If he doesn't—" He didn't finish the sentence. There was no "if he doesn't." It was sign or die. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was a masterpiece of opulence. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the gold-leafed ceiling, casting a warm, flattering glow over the city's elite. A string quartet played soft, classical music in the corner, struggling to be heard over the hum of gossip and the clinking of crystal glasses. This was the engagement party of the year. Liam Hawthorne and Jessica Sterling, the union of manufacturing and real estate. But for Liam, it felt like a funeral. He stood near the ice sculpture, a swan that was slowly melting, much like his composure. He was wearing an old tuxedo, because his new one was still locked inside the tailor's shop he couldn't pay. He hoped no one noticed the slightly frayed cuff. Jessica was by his side, her hand gripping his arm so tight her nails were digging into his skin. She wasn't wearing the gold sequin dress from Valentina's. She was wearing a silver one she had dug out of her closet. It was beautiful, but she was seething. "Stop sweating," Jessica hissed through her teeth, smiling fake smiles at the guests passing by. "You look like you're on trial." "I'm hot," Liam muttered, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. "Where is your father?" "He's in the VIP lounge. He's..." "Hesitant, Liam." "Hesitant? Why?" Liam's heart hammered against his ribs. "He heard rumors today," Jessica said, her eyes darting around the room. "People are talking about the factory gates being locked, about checks bouncing. He wants to delay the signing." "We can't delay," Liam snapped, too loud. A couple nearby turned to look. He lowered his voice to a desperate whisper. "Jessica, you have to convince him. Tell him it's just a restructuring phase. Tell him the merger is the only way to stabilize the market. If we don't sign tonight, the deal is off." Jessica looked at him, her eyes narrowing. She wasn't stupid. She saw the desperation. "Liam," she said slowly, "is there something you're not telling me? My credit card didn't work at the salon today either. It's linked to your account." "It's a bank error," Liam lied, the lie tasting like ash in his mouth. "Just get your father." At that moment, the lights in the ballroom dimmed. The murmur of the crowd died down. A spotlight swept across the floor, focusing on the grand double doors at the top of the sweeping staircase. The general manager of the Ritz stepped into the spotlight, holding a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice booming. "Welcome to this evening of celebration. Before we proceed with the toasts, I have a special announcement. As of this afternoon, this hotel has come under new ownership." A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. Liam frowned. "Who bought the Ritz on a Tuesday?" "The new owner," the manager continued, "wishes to extend her personal congratulations to the happy couple. She has graciously comped the entire evening's bill as a wedding gift." Liam let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Free. That saved him $50,000 he didn't have. Maybe his luck was turning. "Who is it?" Jessica whispered, looking up at the staircase. "Please welcome." The manager gestured to the top of the stairs. "The CEO of Stratton Enterprises, Ms. Brenda Jenkins." The name hit Liam like a physical blow. The air left his lungs. Brenda Jenkins. No, it couldn't be. Brenda Jenkins was a maid. Brenda Jenkins was a nobody. Brenda Jenkins was the woman he had kicked out into the rain 2 days ago. The double doors swung open. A collective gasp swept through the room. Standing at the top of the stairs was a woman who looked like a queen from a forgotten empire. She was wearing the gold sequin dress, the one Jessica had wanted. It clung to her body like liquid metal, shimmering with every breath she took. Her hair, usually hidden in a bun, cascaded down her back in rich, glossy waves. Around her neck sat a diamond necklace that caught the light and threw it back with blinding intensity. But it was her face that froze Liam's blood. It was Brenda. But it wasn't the Brenda he knew. Her eyes were sharp, cold, and amused. She looked down at the crowd, her gaze sweeping over the hundreds of guests until it locked onto Liam and Jessica at the bottom of the stairs. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She simply took the first step down. Click. The sound of her heel on the marble step was amplified by the acoustics of the room. Click. Liam couldn't move. He felt Jessica's hand go limp on his arm. "That's..." Jessica stammered, her face draining of color. "That's the maid. That's your wife." "Ex-wife," Brenda's voice rang out. She hadn't used a microphone, but the room was so silent her voice carried perfectly. She reached the bottom of the stairs, the crowd parting for her like the Red Sea. She walked straight toward them, flanked by 4 security guards and Arthur Penhaligon. She stopped 3 feet away from Liam. Up close, the transformation was terrifying. She smelled of expensive perfume and power. "Hello, Liam," Brenda said smoothly. She held out a glass of champagne. "Happy anniversary. Oh, wait, I suppose it's happy engagement now." Liam opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His brain couldn't reconcile the images. The woman who scrubbed his toilets was owning the room. "You," Liam croaked. "You own Stratton Enterprises?" "I do," Brenda said, taking a sip of her drink. "And by extension, I own Apex Capital, which means I own your debt. And as of this afternoon," she gestured around the room, "I own the venue you're standing in." She turned her gaze to Jessica. Jessica was staring at the gold dress with hatred and envy. "Lovely dress, isn't it?" Brenda asked innocently. "I picked it up yesterday. I heard someone couldn't pay the deposit." "You tricked us," Jessica screeched, finding her voice. "You pretended to be poor. You lied." "I never lied," Brenda said, her voice dropping to a steely chill. "I simply didn't tell you. I wanted to see if Liam loved me, or if he just needed a prop. I got my answer." Suddenly, a heavy hand landed on Liam's shoulder. It was Robert Sterling, Jessica's father. He looked furious. But he wasn't looking at Brenda. He was looking at Liam. "Is this true?" Mr. Sterling demanded, pointing at Brenda. "Is she the one holding your debt? Is she the reason the rumors are flying?" "Robert," Brenda said, stepping forward and offering her hand to Jessica's father. "It's good to see you again. I believe we met at the Davos summit last year. Though I was wearing a different face then." Mr. Sterling's eyes widened. He recognized her. Not as the maid, but as the titan of industry he had seen on magazine covers. The realization dawned on him instantly. "Ms. Jenkins," Mr. Sterling stuttered, ignoring Liam completely. I had no idea." "Mr. Sterling," Brenda said, her voice dripping with mock concern, "I would advise you to read the due diligence report on Hawthorne Industries before you sign anything tonight. My auditors found some interesting discrepancies. I'd hate for a man of your reputation to be dragged into a fraud investigation." "Fraud?" Mr. Sterling stepped back from Liam as if he were contagious. "The merger is off." "No!" Liam screamed, grabbing Mr. Sterling's arm. "You can't listen to her. She's just a bitter ex-wife. The company is fine." "Get your hands off me," Mr. Sterling shoved Liam away. "Come, Jessica, we're leaving." "But Daddy," Jessica whined, looking from Liam to the dress to Brenda. "Now," Mr. Sterling roared. Brenda watched them go, a small smile playing on her lips. She turned back to Liam, who was standing alone in the center of the ballroom, the guests whispering and pointing. Beatrice was in the corner, sobbing into a napkin. "Well, Liam," Brenda said softly, leaning in close so only he could hear. "You wanted a wife who fits your future. I think you're right. I'm far too successful for where you're going." She turned to Arthur. "Arthur, play the video." "What video?" Liam whispered, shaking. Brenda pointed to the massive projection screen behind the stage, usually reserved for wedding photos. "The one from the security cameras in your dining room," Brenda said. "The one where you admit to the fraud. The one the police are watching right now." The massive projection screen behind the stage, which displayed a looped slideshow of Liam and Jessica's engagement photos just moments ago, flickered to black. The room went deathly silent, save for the hum of the projector. Then, the audio crackled to life. It was Liam's voice, clear and undeniable. "I need a wife who fits my future. She can bring $50 million in assets to the marriage. You bring nothing but embarrassment." The video feed appeared. It was the dining room of the Hawthorne estate from 3 nights ago. The angle was high, captured by the hidden security camera nestled in the chandelier. A security measure Liam's paranoid father had installed years ago, one Liam had forgotten, but Brenda, the one who cleaned the fixtures, had not. The guests at the Ritz watched in horrified fascination as the grainy footage showed Liam leaning back in his chair, swirling his wine, looking smug. If the merger goes through, he uses the sterling fortune to pay off the debt before anyone notices. Arthur's voice narrated over the video, cutting to a clip from the boardroom meeting where Liam was laughing with his CFO. "We just need to cook the inventory logs, show assets that don't exist. Once Sterling signs, we use his cash to fill the hole." A gasp rippled through the ballroom. This wasn't just embarrassment. This was evidence of a felony. Liam stood frozen in the center of the dance floor, his face draining of blood until he looked like a wax figure. He looked at the screen, then at Brenda. "Turn it off!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "It's a deep fake. It's AI. She's framing me." He lunged toward the AV booth, but 2 of Brenda's security guards stepped in his path, blocking him like granite walls. "It's over, Liam," Brenda said, her voice calm, cutting through the rising murmur of the crowd. "You wanted the world to know who you are. Now they do." The double doors at the entrance of the ballroom burst open again. This time it wasn't a catering team. It was 6 uniformed officers and 2 detectives in plain clothes. Liam Hawthorne, the lead detective, a man with a grim face named Detective Miller, barked out. Liam stumbled back, knocking over a tray of champagne flutes. Glass shattered around him, a symphony of his destruction. I can explain. It's a misunderstanding." "You have the right to remain silent," Detective Miller said, marching across the dance floor. He grabbed Liam's wrists and spun him around. The metallic clink of handcuffs echoed louder than the music ever had. "You are under arrest for corporate fraud, embezzlement, and falsifying financial records." Beatrice screamed. It was a primal, terrified sound. She rushed forward, grabbing the detective's arm. "No, you can't take him! He's a Hawthorne! Take her!" She pointed a trembling finger at Brenda. "She did this! She hacked our accounts!" Detective Miller gently but firmly pushed Beatrice away. "Ma'am, we have the bank records. We have the IP addresses. And thanks to Ms. Jenkins' cooperation, we have the whistleblowers from your own accounting department. Step back." Beatrice looked around the room, her eyes wild. She saw the judgmental stares of her friends, the people she had tried so hard to impress. She saw the sneer on Jessica Sterling's face. "I didn't know," Beatrice wailed, turning on her son instantly. "I had nothing to do with it. Liam did it all. He lied to me too. Don't arrest me." Liam looked at his mother, the betrayal hitting him harder than the handcuffs. "Mother?" he whispered. "You spent the money. You knew." "Liar!" Beatrice shrieked, backing away. Brenda watched the scene unfold with a cold detachment. She walked slowly toward Liam, the crowd parting for her out of fear and awe. She stopped inches from him. The smell of his expensive cologne was now mixed with the sour scent of fear. "Brenda," Liam pleaded, tears streaming down his face. "Brenda, please. You can stop this. You own the bank. You own the debt. Just forgive it. Please. I'm your husband. We had 3 years. Brenda tilted her head, looking at him as if he were a stranger. "We didn't have 3 years, Liam," she said softly. "I had 3 years of hoping. You had 3 years of using a servant you didn't have to pay." "I loved you," Liam lied, desperate. "No," Brenda corrected him. "You loved the control, and now You have none." She leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that only he could hear. "I told you that you weren't losing a liability, but a safety net. Well, Liam, you're falling now, and I'm not catching you." "Get him out of here," Detective Miller ordered. As the police dragged Liam out of the ballroom, he thrashed and screamed Brenda's name, but she didn't turn around. She stood still, the gold dress shimmering under the chandeliers, a monument to her victory. Jessica Sterling walked up to Brenda. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a terrified respect. "Ms. Jenkins," Jessica said, her voice shaking. I didn't know." "I know you didn't," Brenda said, turning to face her. "You were just another transaction to him, Jessica. A bailout with a heartbeat. Consider this my engagement gift to you. I saved you from marrying a felon." Brenda turned to Arthur. "Clear the room. The party is over." 6 months later, the morning sun filtered through the blinds of the visiting room at the State Correctional Facility. Brenda sat on one side of the glass partition, looking impeccable in a navy business suit. On the other side, Liam sat in an orange jumpsuit. His hair was shaved, his face gaunt. The arrogance had been scrubbed away by the harsh reality of prison life. He picked up the phone receiver. His hands were rough. "You came," he said, his voice hoarse. "I had to sign the final divorce papers," Brenda said, sliding the document through the slot. "And I wanted to deliver the news personally." "What news?" Liam asked, looking at the papers. "That you've taken everything? The house is sold. Mother is living in a state-assisted apartment. Is that enough for you?" "The house was sold to pay back the creditors," Brenda said, matter-of-factly. "But that's not the news." She pulled a magazine out of her bag and pressed it against the glass. It was the cover of Forbes. Brenda was on the front, smiling, confident and strong. The headline read, "The Phoenix of Wall Street, How Brenda Jenkins Turned Betrayal into Billions." "I'm launching a foundation today," Brenda said. "The Second Chance Initiative. It provides legal aid and financial support for spouses trapped in abusive or financially controlling marriages. I named the first grant after your mother." Liam's jaw dropped. "You're mocking us." "I'm learning from you." Brenda stood up, smoothing her skirt. "You taught me that kindness without power is just submission. I won't make that mistake again." She turned to leave. "Brenda!" Liam shouted, slamming his hand against the glass. "Do you ever miss me? Do you ever miss what we had?" Brenda paused at the door. She looked back at the man who had once been her world, the man who had thrown her away like garbage. "I miss the girl I was," she said, "but she's gone. And frankly, I like this woman much better." She walked out of the prison and into the bright, open air. Her driver held the door of the Rolls-Royce open. "Where to, Miss Jenkins?" "Forward, James." She smiled, putting on her sunglasses. "Just forward." As the car drove away, leaving the prison in the dust, Brenda didn't look back. The rearview mirror was for the past, and she had a billion-dollar empire to run. And that is how Brenda Jenkins turned her greatest humiliation into her greatest victory. Liam Hawthorne thought he was discarding a broken, penniless woman, but he ended up awakening a sleeping giant. In his arrogance, he forgot the most important rule of life. You never know who someone truly is until you strip them of everything. He stripped Brenda of her dignity, only to find that underneath the apron was an armor of steel. This story isn't just about revenge, it's about worth. It's a reminder that your value isn't defined by how people treat you, but by what you hold inside. Liam chased gold and lost the diamond he already had. He ended up with nothing, no money, no status and no freedom, while Brenda didn't just reclaim her company, She reclaimed her life. What a satisfying ending. I honestly think Liam got exactly what he deserved. But what about Beatrice? Do you think she deserved to lose everything too? Or was she just a victim of her son's lies? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, please smash that like button right now. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe